No one dreaded the new girl until the Deathworld survivor move part. 1. The unremarkable arrival. The shuttle docked at Orbital Station Harmony 7 without any special announcement. It was just another transport bringing new cadets to the most famous diplomatic academy in the galaxy. Young beings from dozens of worlds stepped off the ship, each one hoping to become an ambassador or peacekeeper someday. Among them was a human girl named Yuna. She was small, quiet. She wore a simple uniform with long sleeves, and she carried only one bag. Her file said she was 22 years old, born on Earth in the Sol system. Nothing special, nothing interesting. Just another student from a minor planet that most species had barely heard of. The other cadets walked past her without a second look. Why would they notice her? Humans were not impressive. They lived short lives. They had no claws, no armor, no special powers. Their planet was considered ordinary. Just another rock floating in space. Yuna found her way to the registration desk. A tall Valorian male stood there, his crystalline skin catching the light like diamonds. His name was Talo, and he was already famous at the academy. Best scores in combat training. Best scores in tactics. Everyone said he would become the greatest diplomat of his generation. He looked down at Yuna with bored eyes. Name and species, he said flatly. Yuna, human. Talo typed something into his screen. Earth, Sol system. Class 4 world. Moderately hospitable. He almost laughed. You will be in Section 7. Smallest quarters. Try not to fall behind. Yuna just nodded. Thank you. She did not argue. She did not complain. She simply picked up her bag and walked away. Talo had already forgotten her. The quarters in Section 7 were indeed small. Just a bed, a desk, and a tiny window looking out at the stars. But Yuna did not seem to mind. She unpacked her few belongings slowly and carefully. A few clothes. A small knife with a worn handle. A photograph of people smiling in front of a building. She looked at the photograph for a long time. Then she put it face down in the drawer. Her roommate arrived an hour later. A Fenari female named Bora, with 4 arms and large compound eyes that reflected everything like mirrors. She was nervous, twitching slightly as she entered the room. Hello, Bora said carefully. You are the human? Yes, I am Yuna. I have never met a human before. I read that your species is very fragile. Yuna smiled gently. We manage. Bora relaxed a little. The humans seemed nice enough. Quiet, but nice. She began unpacking her own things, chattering about her homeworld, her family, her hopes for the academy. Yuna listened politely, nodding at the right moments, asking small questions. But Bora noticed something strange. Yuna never turned her back to the door. Even when she was unpacking, even when she was sitting on her bed, she always positioned herself so she could see anyone who entered. Bora thought this was odd, but she did not mention it. The next morning was orientation. All the new cadets gathered in the Great Hall, a massive chamber with windows showing the stars on every side. Hundreds of young beings sat in rows, representing dozens of species from across the galaxy. The instructors stood at the front. The most impressive was Instructor Kavos, a Grundar who looked like he was made of living stone. He was ancient, scarred, and his eyes held the weight of 1,000 battles. He ran the combat training program, and everyone feared him. Welcome to Harmony 7, Kavos said, his voice like grinding rocks. You are here to learn diplomacy. But diplomacy without strength is meaningless. You will learn to fight. You will learn to survive. And some of you will fail. He looked across the crowd. His eyes passed over Yuna without stopping. The orientation continued. Each species was asked to share information about their homeworld. The Valorians spoke proudly of their paradise planet, with its perfect climate and gentle seas. The Grundar described their volcanic world, harsh but honorable. The Fenari talked about their forest moon, full of life and color. When it was Yuna's turn, she stood slowly. "I am from Earth," she said simply. "Sol system." She sat back down. The room was silent for a moment. Then someone laughed quietly. "Earth? That little blue planet?" Everyone knew it was nothing special. Just another habitable world in a galaxy full of them. Kavos watched the humans sit down. Something flickered in his stone face, but he said nothing. That night, Bora woke to strange sounds. Yuna was having a nightmare. She was curled up in her bed, whimpering softly, her hands clenched into fists. She was muttering words that Bora could not understand. "No. Keep moving. 47 days. Keep moving." Bora did not know what to do. She reached out carefully and touched Yuna's shoulder. Yuna woke instantly. Her eyes snapped open, and for one brief moment, Bora saw something terrifying in them. Something cold and sharp and ancient. Like looking into the eyes of a predator, then it was gone. Yuna blinked, and she was just a small, tired human girl again. "I am sorry," Yuna said softly. "Did I wake you? You were having a nightmare. Are you okay?" "Yes, just old memories." "Go back to sleep." Bora lay back down, but she could not sleep for a long time. She kept thinking about those eyes. That look. It did not match the quiet, polite girl she had met. What had Yuna seen to give her eyes like that? In the administrative center, a drone finished processing the new cadet files. It flagged one for review and sent it to Instructor Kavos' terminal. Kavos was about to sleep when the message arrived. He almost ignored it. But something made him look. The file was for the human. Yuna. There was a note attached from the Galactic Classification Bureau. Homeworld reclassification. Pending. Earth, Deathworld category. Kavos sat very still for a long moment. Deathworld. He had heard stories about Deathworld species. Beings forged in environments so hostile that survival itself was a miracle. Species with instincts honed by millions of years of constant danger. But humans? Those small, soft creatures with no claws and no armor? Kavos looked at the human's photograph. A young woman with gentle eyes and a polite smile. He had been training soldiers for 200 years. He had seen warriors from 100 worlds, and suddenly he was not sure what he was looking at. No one dreaded the new girl until the Deathworld Survivor Move Part 2. Small. Cracks in the mask. 3 weeks passed at the academy. Yuna attended every class, completed every assignment, and spoke to almost no one. She sat in the back of every room. She ate alone in the corner of the dining hall. She smiled politely when anyone talked to her, but she never started conversations herself. The other cadets barely noticed she existed, but Instructor Kavos was watching. He had requested Yuna's full file from the Galactic Archives. It was taking longer than expected. Something about restricted access and sealed records. This made him more curious, not less. In the meantime, he watched her in training. Combat class was held in a large arena with dampened weapons. The blades and staffs looked real, but they could not actually hurt anyone. Pain was simulated through neural feedback. It felt real, but caused no damage. Talo dominated every session. His crystalline body was fast and strong, and he had trained since childhood. He defeated opponent after opponent with elegant, brutal efficiency. He smiled after each victory, enjoying the attention. When Yuna's name was called, the room went quiet with boredom. The human versus a Quarath male named Goru. Goru was reptilian, twice Yuna's size, covered in scales like armor. Everyone knew how this would end. Why Yuna stepped onto the mat. She held her training staff loosely, almost carelessly. Her posture was relaxed. She looked like she was waiting for a bus, not preparing for combat. Goru charged, and then something strange happened. Yuna moved. It was just a sidestep, nothing complicated. But it was wrong somehow. Too smooth. Too fast. Like she had known exactly where Guru would attack before he even decided. Then she stumbled. It looked natural. Her foot caught on something, her balance failed, and Guru's massive arm swept her to the ground. The match was over in seconds. Winner, Guru, the automated system announced. Yuna stood up, dusted herself off, and bowed politely. Good match, she said quietly. Gor, you looked confused. He had felt her move. For one instant she had been somewhere else entirely. But then she had fallen so easily. Kavos saw it too. His stone eyes narrowed. That stumble was fake. The human had moved like a trained warrior, then deliberately lost. Why? What was she hiding? In the dining hall, Yuna sat alone as always. Her tray had simple food, mostly vegetables and a small portion of protein. She ate slowly, watching the room without seeming to watch. Bora approached her table with her own tray. Can I sit with you? Yuna looked up, surprised. Of course. But the others might talk. I am not very popular. I do not care what they say. Bora sat down. You are my roommate. And you seem lonely. Yuna smiled, and for a moment it reached her eyes. Thank you, Bora. They ate together. Bora talked about her classes, her struggles with the academic work, her fear of the combat training. Yuna listened and offered small pieces of advice. Simple things. How to breathe during stress. How to focus when afraid. You know a lot about fear, Bora observed. Yuna's smile faded slightly. I have had practice. Before Bora could ask more, Talo appeared at their table. He looked down at them with contempt. The insect and the weakling. How fitting. He laughed. Tell me, human, how does it feel to be the most useless species in the galaxy? Yuna looked up at him calmly. I would not know. How does it feel to need everyone to fear you? The dining hall went silent. Talo's crystalline face hardened. For a moment, he looked like he might strike her. But Yuna did not flinch. She just sat there, looking at him with those quiet, patient eyes. Finally, Talo snorted. Not worth my time. He walked away. Bora stared at Yuna. That was brave. No, it was just the truth. Later that week, there was an emergency drill. A simulated hull breach. Alarms screamed, lights flashed red, and all cadets were ordered to evacuate to safe zones. Bora ran with the crowd, following the emergency lights. But when she reached the safe zone, Yuna was not there. She waited. 5 minutes. 10. 20. Finally, Bora went back to find her. She found Yuna in Section 7, sitting in their quarters. The lights had failed in this part of the station. Everything was dark. But Yuna was just sitting on her bed, perfectly still, breathing slowly. Yuna? The drill is over. Are you okay? Yuna looked up. Her eyes took a moment to focus, like she was coming back from somewhere far away. Yes, I am fine. I just waited. In the dark? Alone? Were you not scared? Yuna considered the question. No, I have had worse. That night, Bora could not sleep. She kept thinking about the way Yuna had sat in that darkness. Not panicked. Not scared. Just waiting. Conserving energy. Like someone who had learned that sometimes the only thing you could do was survive until the danger passed. What had made her like this? In his office, Kavos finally received the sealed file. It had taken 3 weeks and special authorization from the Galactic Council. Whatever was in this file, someone had wanted it hidden. He opened it. The first page was a rescue report. Location: Mining Colony Kepler 7b. Kavos knew that name. Kepler 7b was a Class 9 Deathworld. Volcanic activity, toxic atmosphere, extreme seismic instability. Even with full protective equipment, Survival was measured in hours, not days. The report detailed a catastrophic collapse. The entire colony had been destroyed. 2,000 people. Survivors recovered. One name. YUNA.Days survived alone after the collapse. 40-7.KAVO stopped reading. His stone hands were trembling. 40-7 days. On a Class 9 Deathworld. Alone. He looked at the human's photograph again. That small, quiet girl with the polite smile. And he understood why she hid. Why she pretended to be weak. Why she lost fights on purpose. Because if anyone knew what she really was, they would be terrified. He was terrified. No one dreaded the new girl until the Deathworld Survivor Move Part 3. The Predator's Eyes, the midterm examination, was the most important event of the semester. Every cadet knew about the survival simulation. Teams of 4 would be dropped into a hostile holographic environment and forced to survive for 12 hours. The teams that finished with the fewest casualties earned the highest honors. Kavos personally selected the teams. Most cadets were placed with their friends or species mates. But when the final list was posted, everyone noticed something strange. Team 12. Bora, Dawan, Talo, Yuna. Talo was furious. He stormed to Kavos' office immediately. "This is an insult," he said. "You put me with the weakest cadets in the academy. A nervous Fenari, a Plethian who cannot even hold a weapon, and a human who loses every fight. I will carry them all." Kavos looked at him with ancient, knowing eyes. "Then prove it." The simulation arena was massive, capable of creating any environment from any world in the galaxy. The teams gathered in the preparation area, receiving their equipment and final instructions. Dohan was terrified. He was Plethian, a gelatinous species that could sense emotions. He had no combat skills at all. He had only enrolled in the academy because his family wanted a diplomat in the bloodline. "I cannot do this," he whispered to Bora. "I am not a fighter." "Neither am I," Bora admitted. "But we have Talo. He is the best." Yuna said nothing. She was checking her equipment with careful, practiced movements, testing the weight of her pack, adjusting her boots, counting her supplies. The environment was revealed on the massive display screen. A volcanic hellscape. Rivers of lava. Toxic air. Unstable ground. Classification. Class 7. Talo's crystalline face lost some of its color. Even he had never trained in conditions this harsh. But Yuna just nodded slowly. "I know this place," she murmured. The simulation began. They materialized on a ridge overlooking a field of volcanic vents. The air was thick with sulfur, simulated to smell like burning eggs. The ground trembled beneath their feet. Talo immediately took command. "Follow me. We need to reach the extraction point on the other side of this valley. I will lead." He started walking. Within 3 steps, he triggered a hidden gas vent. Superheated steam exploded around him, and he screamed as the neural feedback simulated third-degree burns. Yuna was beside him instantly. She had not even seemed to move. "Unstable ground," she said calmly. The darker patches released steam. "Step only on the lighter rock." Talo stared at her, pain still fading from his nerves. "How did you know that?" "I have seen it before." She took the lead. Talo was too shaken to argue. They walked in single file. Yuna first, then Dowan, then Bora, then Talo. She moved with strange efficiency, her eyes constantly scanning the terrain. She never stepped wrong, never triggered a trap, never wasted a single movement. The others found themselves copying her, stepping where she stepped, breathing when she breathed. It was like following a guide through a minefield. 2 hours into the simulation, Dowan fell. A rock gave way beneath him, and his leg twisted at a horrible angle. The neural feedback simulated a fracture, and he collapsed with a cry of pain. Talo looked at him coldly. He cannot walk. We have to leave him. What? Bora was horrified. We cannot just abandon him. It is a simulation. He will respawn at the finish line. But if we waste time carrying him, we all fail. Yuna turned around. Something had changed in her eyes. They were cold now, hard, ancient. No one gets left behind, she said quietly. Do not be stupid, human. This is a competition. I said no. The temperature in the air seemed to drop. Talo took a step back without meaning to. There was something in her voice that made his survival instinct scream warnings. Yuna knelt beside Dohwan. She tore a strip from her sleeve and fashioned a splint from volcanic rock. Her movements were fast and precise, like she had done this 100 times before. Can you hold on to my back? She asked gently. Dohwan nodded, tears streaming down his gelatinous face. I am sorry. I am slowing everyone down. You are alive. That is all that matters. She lifted him onto her back. He was not small, but she carried him like he weighed nothing. They continued. 8 hours in, disaster struck. A massive thermal serpent emerged from a lava flow, its body glowing red with heat. It was one of the simulation's apex predators, designed to test the cadets' combat abilities. Talo raised his weapon, but his hands were shaking. Bora froze completely, her compound eyes wide with terror. Yuna set Dohwan down carefully. Then she stepped forward. The serpent was 3 times her size. Its jaws could swallow her whole. Heat radiated from its scales like a furnace. Yuna did not run. She did not attack. She simply looked at it, and then she moved, It was not like anything the others had ever seen. She did not fight the creature directly. She used the terrain, the heat vents, the creature's own hunting patterns against it. She led it toward a sulfur pocket, timing her movements perfectly. The serpent lunged at her. She dodged by centimeters, rolling beneath its strike, and triggered the vent behind her. The explosion of superheated gas engulfed the creature. It screamed and thrashed, then collapsed. Yuna stood over the simulated corpse, breathing hard. Her eyes were different now, focused, calculating, the eyes of something that had spent a lifetime learning how to survive. We keep moving, she said. No one argued. They finished first. Team 12 was the only team to complete the simulation with 0 casualties. The observers in the control room were silent, staring at the replay screens. Kavos watched the human on the monitor. He watched her carry an injured teammate through a volcanic hellscape. He watched her defeat an apex predator with nothing but intelligence and terrain. He understood now. She had been hiding, pretending to be weak, because she did not want anyone to see what she really was. That night, Bora found Yuna sitting alone in their quarters. She looked exhausted, but something else too. Sad, maybe, or lonely. Yuna, Bora said softly. What happened to you? Before you came here? Yuna was silent for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. There was a place called Kepler 7b, a mining colony. I was a botanist there, young, naive, happy. What happened? The ground collapsed, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. Everything fell apart in one day. She closed her eyes. 2,000 people died. Except me. How long were you alone? 47 days. Bora could not imagine it. 47 days on a dying world. Alone. Surrounded by death. How did you survive? Yuna opened her eyes. In them, Bora saw something ancient and terrible. Something that had stared into the void and refused to blink. I became what I needed to become. No one dreaded the new girl until the Deathworld Survivor Move Part 4. The truth of 47 Days Admiral Hyeri was the oldest being on Harmony 7. She was Silurian. a species with powerful telepathic abilities. And she had lived for over 800 years. In all that time, she had seen many strange things. But the file on her desk made her pause. Kavos stood before her, his stone face unreadable. "You are certain about this?" she asked. "I watched the simulation myself. The human is not what she appears to be." Hyari opened the full file on Yuna, medical records, psychological evaluations, the rescue report from Kepler 7b. She read slowly, carefully, feeling the weight of every word. The mining colony had been home to 2,000 people. Scientists, engineers, families. Yuna had been a junior botanist, only 19 years old. She had come to study the unique plant life that grew near the volcanic vents. Then the collapse happened. The first earthquake destroyed 60% of the colony in minutes. Buildings fell. Tunnels caved in. The emergency shelters were buried under tons of rock. In the chaos, only 200 people survived the initial disaster. Within a week, that number dropped to 50. The volcanic activity increased. The air became toxic. The native creatures, things that lived deep underground, began to emerge. They were attracted by the heat, the movement, the smell of blood. By day 20, only 12 people remained. They had found a cave system that offered temporary shelter. They rationed food. They took turns keeping watch. They held on to hope. On day 32, the creatures found them. The medical report from Yuna's rescue described her injuries. Malnutrition so severe, her body had begun consuming its own muscle. Toxic exposure that had scarred her lungs permanently. 17 different pathogens in her blood, all somehow held in check by an immune system pushed beyond its limits. And the scars. Burns covering her arms and back. Claw marks on her shoulders. A long surgical line on her abdomen, crudely stitched with what appeared to be plant fiber. She had performed surgery on herself. The psychological evaluation was even more disturbing. Subject displays extreme hypervigilance masked by deliberate social passivity. Subject intentionally suppresses reflexes and physical capabilities to avoid alarming others. When asked about her survival, subject simply stated, "I stopped being afraid. Fear was a luxury I could not afford." Hyari set down the file. Her ancient hands were trembling. "She should be broken," she said quietly. "By every model we have, she should be completely non-functional. The trauma alone should have destroyed her mind." Kavos nodded slowly. "And yet, she is the most capable cadet I have trained in 200 years. What do we do with her? We stop pretending she is ordinary, and we give her a reason to fight for something other than survival." In the dormitory, Boris sat with Yuna in the darkness. The lights were dim, and the stars outside the window cast silver shadows across the room. "Tell me," Boris said gently. "Tell me what happened." Yuna was quiet for a long time. When she finally spoke, her voice was hollow and distant. "There was a man named Yao. He was an engineer. Strong, smart, kind. When the creatures came to our shelter, he saved 3 of us. He led us deeper into the caves, to a place the creatures could not reach." She paused, remembering. "For 2 weeks, the 4 of us survived together. Yeho found water. I found plants that were not poisonous. The others helped where they could. We thought maybe rescue would come. Maybe we just had to hold on a little longer. What happened to them? The ground collapsed again. We were separated. I heard them screaming, but I could not reach them. The tunnel was blocked." Bora felt tears forming in her compound eyes. "Yuna, I found Yeho 3 days later. He was trapped under a rock, his legs crushed. He was still alive, but barely. There was nothing I could do. No way to save him." She looked at her hands. "He told me to keep going. He told me that surviving was not giving up. He told me to live for both of us. And then He died in my arms. And I kept going. Silence filled the room. For the next 12 days, I was alone. Truly alone. I ate things that should have killed me. I slept in crevices so small I could barely breathe because they were the only places the creatures could not reach. I tracked their movements by scent and sound. I learned their patterns. She touched the scar on her arm. On day 40, one of them caught me. It tore open my side. I killed it with a rock and stitched myself closed with plant fiber and a bone needle. Laura could not speak. She could only listen. When the rescue ship finally came, the soldiers found me sitting in a cave, surrounded by the bones of creatures I had killed. They looked at me like I was a monster, like I was something that should not exist. She finally met Bora's eyes. That is why I hide, Bora. That is why I pretend to be weak. Because when people see what I really am, they are afraid. Bora reached out with all 4 of her arms and embraced her friend. Yuna stiffened at first, not used to being touched. Then, slowly she relaxed. I am not afraid of you, Bora whispered. You survived. That is not something to be ashamed of. That is something to be proud of. Yuna did not answer, but for the first time in years, she let herself be held. The next morning, Admiral Hyeri called an emergency meeting. A distress signal had been received from an uncharted moon in the outer systems. A passenger vessel had crashed. Survivors detected, but the environment was classified as hostile. A rescue team was assembled. Elite soldiers, experienced officers, the best the station had to offer. And then Hyeri looked at Yuna. Cadet, you are coming with us. Yuna did not hesitate. She simply nodded double quotes, yes, Admiral. Bora grabbed her arm. Yuna, wait. You do not have to do this. You have already survived enough. Yuna looked at her friend with those ancient, terrible eyes. But now there was something else in them too. Purpose. Determination. Those people on that moon are waiting for someone to save them. Someone who understands what it means to refuse to die. She gently removed Bora's hand. This time, I am not running. I am fighting. The rescue shuttle descended through clouds of toxic gas. Even the elite soldiers on board were tense. Through the windows, they could see the moon's surface, a nightmare landscape of glowing forests and shifting ground. The trees emitted blue light, and strange shapes moved between them. The crash site was 3 kilometers from the only safe landing zone. 3 kilometers through terrain that had already destroyed 2 survey drones. Admiral, Hyeri's voice came through the communication system. Ground team, I will coordinate from the shuttle. Kavos, you have command. Kavos looked at his team. 6 elite soldiers from different species, all veterans. Bora, who had insisted on joining as medical support. Talo, who had volunteered to prove himself. And Yuna, the small human who sat quietly in the corner, checking her equipment. The shuttle landed. The doors opened. Immediately, 3 soldiers were hit. The plants around the landing zone fired crystalline spines when disturbed. 2 soldiers went down with legs pierced, and 1 took a spine through the shoulder. Chaos erupted. The elite tactical experts shouted orders, but no one had ever seen terrain like this. No one knew what to do except Yuna. She was already moving, studying the ground, smelling the air. She touched the bark of a tree with her bare hand. It tried to cut her, and she did not flinch. Single file, she said, her voice calm and clear. Step exactly where I step. Do not touch anything unless I say. And turn off your helmet lights. The predators here hunt by light, not sound. The soldiers stared at her. A cadet giving orders to veterans? Kavos made the decision. Do what she says, now. They formed a line. Yuna took the lead. The march began. She moved through the forest like she had been born there. She spotted dangers before anyone else could see them. Pitfall nests disguised as solid ground. Pools that looked like water but were actually digestive acid. Vines that would strangle anything that touched them. Every step she took was perfect. Every decision was right. The elite soldiers followed a 22-year-old human girl through a death maze, and none of them questioned it. 2 hours in, Talo made a mistake. He stepped off the path and walked into a web-like structure stretched between two trees. Something stirred in the canopy above. Something massive. The creature that descended was terrifying. It looked like a spider crossed with a wolf, 6 meters tall, with too many legs and jaws that dripped venom. Everyone froze. Yuna did not. She cut Talo free with one swift motion and shoved him behind her. Then she stepped forward, placing herself between the creature and her team. "Nobody move," she said quietly. "Nobody breathe." The creature loomed over her. Its many eyes studied her, searching for weakness. It was an apex predator, the king of this forest. It had never encountered anything that did not run. Yuna did not run. She stood perfectly still, meeting its gaze. Not challenging, not threatening, just present, calm, unafraid. 30 seconds passed. A minute, too. The creature retreated. It melted back into the canopy, disappearing as quickly as it had come. The forest was silent again. Talo was shaking. How? How did you do that? Yuna looked at him with those ancient eyes. Apex predators respect other apex predators. They reached the crash site an hour later. The passenger vessel was half buried in the ground, its hull torn open. Inside, they found 11 survivors, including 3 children. They had been hiding for 2 days, surrounded by things that wanted to eat them. A woman rushed forward when she saw the soldiers. "Thank the stars. Please, you have to get us out of here." Kavos assessed the situation. The extraction zone was now compromised. The shuttle could not land there anymore. They would have to wait for orbital pickup, at least 6 hours. "We hold position here," he announced. "Orbital extraction will arrive in 6 hours. We defend this location. 6 hours. In this environment. With injured civilians and children." Yuna shook her head. "No, we move." Kavos turned to her. "The shuttle cannot land anywhere else. If we leave this wreckage, we have no shelter. The shuttle cannot land at the original zone either. But there is a secondary location 4 kilometers east. Rocky terrain. The creatures do not like rock. They will not follow us there. 4 kilometers? With civilians? Through this forest? I will get them out." The elite soldiers looked at each other. This was insane. A cadet proposing to lead a group of frightened civilians through a hostile alien forest? But Kavos remembered the file. 47 days. On a Class 9 Deathworld. Alone. "Do it," he said. The final march began. Yuna led 11 civilians and the battered rescue team through 4 kilometers of nightmare. She carried a child on her back, a little girl who was too scared to walk. She calmed a panicking mother. She helped the injured move faster. She never stopped scanning the forest, never stopped planning. The soldiers stopped seeing her as a cadet. They started seeing her as what she truly was, a Deathworld survivor, a human, the product of a planet that had been trying to kill its inhabitants for 4 billion years. 3 hours into the march, disaster struck again. A swarm of flying predators descended from the canopy, hundreds of them. Drawn by the heat and movement of the group, Yuna had been waiting for this. She pulled out emergency flares and chemicals she had gathered earlier. She created a fire line, igniting the air itself. The swarm flew into the flames and burned. Kavos watched in disbelief. "You planned for this." Yuna was already moving again. "I planned for everything. It is the only way to survive." They reached the rocky terrain as the sun was setting. The shuttle descended through the toxic clouds and landed perfectly on the stone platform Yuna had identified. Everyone boarded. Civilians first, then soldiers, then Bora and Talo. Yuna was last. She stood at the ramp, looking back at the forest. The glowing trees swayed in the wind. Strange shapes moved in the shadows. It was beautiful and terrible, a world of death and wonder. Something flickered in her eyes. Not triumph, not relief, just recognition. Understanding Dot, she whispered, so quietly that no one heard. I am not afraid of you anymore. She boarded the shuttle. The doors closed. They lifted off. 1 month later, the academy held a ceremony. Every cadet, every instructor, every official on Harmony 7 gathered in the Great Hall. Yuna stood before them in a new uniform. Not Cadet Gray. Officer White, Admiral Hyeri spoke with deep respect. For exceptional valor, leadership, and the preservation of 11 lives, Cadet Yuna is hereby granted the rank of lieutenant. She is also appointed to a newly created position, Hostile Environment Specialist, First Class. The applause was thunderous, but Yuna barely heard it. She was looking at the people she had saved. The mother, the children, the survivors who would go home to their families because of her. Talo approached her afterward. He bowed deeply, a gesture of the highest respect in Valorian culture. I was wrong about you, he said. About all humans? Yuna smiled gently. Most humans never see what I saw. They are kinder than me, softer. I am just what happens when kindness is not enough. Mora hugged her and did not let go for a long time. Later, Yuna stood at a window, looking at the stars. Kavos joined her. You could have stayed hidden, he said. Let others handle the danger. Why reveal yourself? Yuna considered the question. On Kepler 7b, I survived because I had to. For myself. But those people on that moon needed someone who understood what it means to refuse to die. She touched the glass. Beyond it, a transport ship was arriving. New cadets, coming to learn diplomacy and peacekeeping. Humanity came from a Deathworld, instructor. We have been fighting for survival since the first cell divided. Most of us have forgotten. We live in comfortable homes, eat easy food, fear small things. She turned to face him. But somewhere deep inside every human, there is a survivor. Someone who remembers what it means to fight, to endure, to refuse to stop when everything says you should. She started walking toward the door. I think it is time we remembered. Kavos watched her go. This small, quiet girl who had terrified an apex predator with nothing but her presence. He thought of his own homeworld, safe, stable, gentle Dot, and for the first time in his ancient life, he understood why the old spacefaring races had always whispered warnings about the third planet from an unremarkable yellow star. Not because humans were strong, not because humans were fast, not because humans had claws or armor or special powers, but because when everything else died, when the world itself turned against them, humans simply refused to stop. They kept going. They survived. And sometimes, that was the most terrifying thing of all.